Hello, I am Reverend Irene Smith, and I'd like to welcome you to Generationally Speaking. Here at the table, we come and we discuss life issues, no matter what they might be. As we sit at the table with each generation, we all learn, we all grow, we all are inspired.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Generationally Speaking.
All the time, but they did. Because one Sunday I was taking some kids somewhere and I was saying something. And one of the boys said, "Now, Father, that's not what you said in chapel." So, I've had to walk the talk.
Yeah. So as a father, you've entered the priesthood. What did your parents did they live up? Because I didn't ask. Did they live long?
My mother died in 1984, so she died before I went to seminary.
Okay.
My father was very supportive. In fact, he came to my ordination to the priesthood was on a very cold January day, January 27th, 1990. It was blizzard that morning, but my father and his wife were here for my ordination, But I was not my father's priest.
Okay.
I was still his son.
Yes.
Now, he would confide in me sometimes because he said, "Now, you're a priest. You're not supposed to, we don't talk telling anybody this, But no, I still had that father-son relationship, my dad.
And your siblings?
My siblings, well, my two younger sisters were here for my ordination. I have since lost, in fact, this year, my sister, I have a sister 3 years younger than I am. She unfortunately came down with Alzheimer's dementia in her 60s, and she fell and broke her hip in January, and things just went downhill. She died on April 22nd of this year, and my only brother, died a month later, May 22nd. He was in very poor health. I wasn't aware of how poor his health was. So of the 5 children, I'm the oldest. My sister, who's the youngest, we're the 2 that survive. One of the things is, my sisters always said, "Now listen, we're not going to be calling you Father Henry or Father Doyle. We're Henry." I said, I know, I'm your brother. So,
So in terms of the life of, you work at this school. I'm going to ask you first about the school, this diversity of students, this age group. And what is it? What are some of the life lessons that you desire for these students to walk away with as they matriculate through the school?
I'm very much an advocate for service, that what we do for others is more important than what we do for ourselves. And I want them to know, and I also remind myself, that the world does not center around me. Right. That we are a part of a vast sea of humanity, and we need to make every effort to get along with others, especially those who differ from us. There are people who differ from us even in our family, and that we're going to meet people in life who have a different opinion than we do, a different way of living, and that we are part of this world together. That's what I like about our school, is that I have had students here who are Jewish, who are non-Christian, who are Muslim. We have students from all around the country and the world. And one of the things I would always say in chapel, beginning of chapel, I would say at the beginning of the year, I said, "Now listen, I'm not going to make you a Christian. We have something called the Holy Spirit that does that. But I'm going to treat you as a child of God, because I believe all of us have been created in the image and likeness of God. So I'm going to treat you as a child of God. I'm going to treat you with respect."
When you have this great diversity of students who come from all walks of life and faith, and what they've known from young children growing up, how do you begin to meet them in this space of teaching them about Jesus? How do you do that? I mean, Because you said, some of them are coming from Muslim
Well, I
homes.
think the parables are a very good example
Okay.
of teaching them about Jesus. The parable of the Good Samaritan is one that comes to mind that we can all relate to, I think, in many ways. The parable of the prodigal son. So teaching, especially the parables,
Right.
have been very good.
Yeah. So when they come to the school, I know they're coming to get this great education, but at the same time, they have chapel.
Yes.
How have you all been able to successfully marry those two things together?
Well, one of the things we've done, I think, is that we require them to attend. And when we say the Lord's Prayer, we don't make everybody say the Lord's Prayer. We invite them.
Right.
I remember I had a young man, he was from Taiwan. He was here 3 years. Oh, he just detested chapel. He did not like chapel. And he came back a year later. He was so excited. Father Doyle, yes, Co. I've been baptized. I was, I didn't try to show my shock, but I was. And he said, I know you, but you helped me here. You helped me. So sometimes it's like Paul said, you plant the seed and they take off from there.
Yeah.
Or they don't.
Yeah. So your decision to become a priest, how did that impact then on your personal life? Did you inwardly decide that this is what I'm going to devote myself to, and not necessarily seek to have a family, but I've decided that this is something that I want to dedicate my life to?
Well, I believe I never sensed, I'll be honest with you, I didn't have a girlfriend in high school. I did a little date. I had my first date in college. But I devoted myself to, I just believe that God called me not to marry.
Yeah.
Okay. But yet, I'm very supportive of marriage. I mean, I do a lot of weddings. I did one this past Saturday. I've traveled outside the country. I've traveled in the country to join couples in marriage. But I believe God calls some of us to live a single celibate life.
Yeah.
And I know that's what God called me to do, even though I did not think that that's what was going to happen. I thought, well, maybe I would marry, but it just hasn't happened.
Yeah. We read about the Apostle Paul, and he writes how he wished that everyone would be like him, that they might be able to give themselves more freely to the Lord's work, versus when you're married and you have children, those other commitments you have to adhere to. You have to take time away from you. But I
disagree with Paul.
Okay.
I disagree with Paul because I believe we do need to have married clergy.
Right.
Okay. The Lord calls. That's why I still think the Catholic Church, Roman Catholic Church, they would have more priests today if they would. I know some who left the church because they wanted to marry.
Right.
And they were good priests.
So you're saying you don't believe that you should have to take a vow of celibacy, but that having married priests and single priests and reverends, all of those things are good in the working of the church.
They are good in the working of the church because they're good at, helping. I think sometimes our married clergy can understand more what married people are going through in their relationships, because they also struggle in their relationships.
Yeah.
But I think that's very important.
As a priest, do you take time away for just an opportunity just to renew your outreach that you have? Do you take time away just for yourself?
Well, yes, some clergy do. I'm not very good at it.
Okay.
I'm not very good at doing that. For example, I went to Colorado for 2 weeks, as I usually do now. But when I was out there, I preached in the parish where my sponsoring parish was seminary. I always preach on that Sunday. But also this year, I led the service because the priest had just got back from a trip, and then she came down with COVID. So she's asked me if I would do the service that Sunday. So I did. So I end up doing sometimes for lack of a better word, I call it a busman's holiday, because it's like the busman, you go out there, you drive the bus, but you still get to see the sights, but you're doing a little work. But it's hard for me I don't relax as much as I probably should. I know that. I just I don't sleep as long as I'm supposed to sleep.
So when what is an average day for you? I mean,
an average day. I'll give you an example. For example, today, I come to the office about 7 a.m. At 8:45, we have what's called community period. And I have 7 sophomores for whom I'm their advisor. And so we meet. So tomorrow we'll have chapel during a community period. So the students and I will be in chapel. Then I do the mail. I put the mail, I go down the mail that comes in, I put it in the boxes. I'll deliver Meals on Wheels. So I'll go off campus and deliver Meals on Wheels. Today also, I went to a visitation that was at 12:30 to 1:30. A man had died at age 96. And he and I had been volunteer drivers for Meals on Wheels program. I end up meeting with students sometimes, like one of my boys, I needed to talk with him about an academic, grade or something. I also sometimes have some meetings. And my correspondence in the evening. I spend most of my evening on my correspondence. And that correspondence consists of mostly birthday cards and anniversary cards.
Speaking of which, let's talk about that card ministry that you have. Where did this card ministry start, and how many years have you been doing it, and how long is that list?
Well, the list is very long, and I've been doing it ever since I got here. Oh. What happened was my parish priest used to send all of us a birthday card, all the children a birthday card. So I said, I'm going to do that when I came here. So I started sending the students a birthday card. Well, then it got to be the faculty and the staff. Then it got to be their children. Then I'm also involved in our ministerial association. Lately, I've been the perpetual president and secretary of this association. I've also done some pulpit supply in the Methodist Church, a Lutheran church, UCC church, a non-denominational church. I've done pulpit, they call it pulpit supply. I've led the service on Sunday. And I get their newsletters, and a number of the people in those congregations, I get their newsletter. They get birthday cards from me, anniversary cards. And so it's grown.
Well, let's start with the number of students that are there at the
But you see, when you leave it, I don't stop.
Yes, but how many students are we talking about? We're not talking about 50.
No, we're talking about, I send out over 5,000 birthday cards a year.
5,000.
Over 5,000, yes.
Over 5,000.
Yes.
Do you have, you must have a calendar someplace of all.
Well, I have 3 lists. I have 3 birthday lists that I work with regularly. And then I have some other lists from the churches. But yes, and I, for example, I try to stay a week ahead. So I've got to get the ones addressed now for the 6th of September.
Okay.
And I looked at my list, and I've got about 30 to do. And I hand address all of the cards. Mm. And I hand address the envelope. And I don't, for example, say you live on East Tennessee Road. I insist on spelling out the word east. I insist on spelling out the word road. And you live in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So I insist on writing out Wisconsin.
Wow. Wow.
So yes, I do a lot of cards.
Not only do you mail a
And I
lot,
also do, for example, Rosh Hashanah. So for my Jew, I have about
Yes.
50 Jewish households. So I do Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year, Hanukkah, and Passover.
wow. You must purchase a lot of cards.
I do. And if you walk into my apartment right now, you'll see all these cards all over. I order them. I also go to a couple stores in town and get them.
Yeah. So when you got the assignment and you came to Minnesota and you looked around, and I'm sure that there were very few Blacks/African Americans
At that time, yes.
at that time. And I heard you say something about, I'm very comfortable. But my question is, where did that level of comfortability come from?
Well, it came from very early on in my life when, going to, being in, my grandmother told me that, you don't have to like everybody. But she says, you've got, Lord told us to love one another, love your neighbor. And so I just started trying to do what my grandmother said. And there were times, there have been times I've been called names.
Wow.
And, trying to call them another name back didn't work, because, then you're in this contention. And I don't like that. I don't like being at odds with someone. I remember here in Faribault, I was delivering Meals on Wheels. And a man I stopped, about a half a block back. He was going to cross the street. He was crossing the street. So I stopped. He crossed. And when I passed him, he put a point in his face, slow down, slow down. And I said, I did slow down. I let you cross the street. Well, then I went and delivered the rest of the route. And the whole time I'm delivering, I felt awful about that exchange. Well, I had seen where he'd gone. So I was, now granted, I had another place I was supposed to go. But before I got there, I went back there. I knocked on the door. And the man who answered said, oh, hello, Father, how you doing? I said, I got to come in your house. I got to come in and say something to this man in your house. So I went in and apologized to him. He said, oh, don't worry. I said, listen, you were right and I was wrong. And the reason why one of the reasons I did that, because I wanted to be at peace, but you never know if you're going to see that other person again. Don't ever say you're not going to see somebody again. Well, it was about a month later, I did see him again.
Wow.
At the funeral home. Both of us are living, but we were the only two in that room at the time.
Wow.
There was not the tension that there would have been, you see, had I not apologized. He was in the right.
In your years growing up as a Black man in America,
Mm-hmm.
and being in some of the areas that you've been in, so I know that you faced discriminatory treatment or some hostility, or you may have felt some tenseness. What is it that you do that allows you to always give back that love, or to try to give back, try to give love, try to educate that person from another perspective instead of giving back what they've given to you?
Well, I try to do unto others as I would want them to do unto me. And I think one of the things, but you see, but I have an advantage. Okay. I have an advantage. The collar.
The collar.
Okay. The collar.
Yeah.
Okay. And that is the difference right there.
Right. Exactly.
And I understand that. I am a very fortunate Black man.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up, I did not have to ever go hungry a day in my life, mm-hmm. unless I chose to. And I had doors open to me that others have not had.
Mm-hmm.
I came from a family that was well established, who also, and I believe this too. When my father and mother said this, my father said this, if you ever end up in jail, you're staying there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I knew he meant it. So I knew I had to do right. Because my family didn't have, we're going to have these, I had to, one of the things I have, my grandmother's gone, my mother and father gone, but you know what? Honor your father and your mother. You honor them even today. Because I can hear when my grandma, when I'm not doing something right, my grandmother says, God doesn't like ugly.
Yeah.
God does not like ugly.
So it was those early years that helped to give you that spiritual formation, that strength of who you are, so that you're able to sit in the room with other folk, no matter their hue, and not feel less than or intimidated by their presence.
Mm-hmm. Because and see, my grandmother and other generation, they had some hard times, but they relied on the Lord. Their strength came from it. And that's how they were able to withstand the things that they had to go through in life. They believed in our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. And like I said, they walked the talk.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I know that's what I have to do. I'm under the microscope every day.
Ooh.
Okay.
Ooh. That's very true. That's very true. That is very true, especially with the collar and the color. You're always under the microscope.
Well, I can hear my cousin Aretha saying right now, and she's since gone. That's one of my mother's first cousin. You better make sure your shoes are polished.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. That's one of the things I know. I knew I've had to work a little harder. Okay. I've got to look a little neater.
Yeah.
Okay. And so I've been able to, I had a cousin. Well, in fact, one of my cousins, he just died May 21st. He was one of my first cousins on my father's side. And he was asking me, he said, you really ought to, I think you should be in a Black church. You need to be in a Black church. I said, Leonard, I feel this is where God means for me to be. And finally, he accepted that because I have felt wanted, needed, and supported here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Not only at the school, but in the community.
Right, right.
I had a funeral for a man on Saturday morning. And his widow said, I couldn't have done this without you. Couldn't have done this without you. Now, he had died in January, and she was finally able to have a service. And I had been called on January 2nd. I was told his kidneys were failing. So I went to see Chuck. You wouldn't have known his kidneys were failing. I walked in and said, hello, Henry, how you doing? We had a good conversation. Well, he died 4 days later. We had his funeral. And she said, well, I couldn't have done this without you. I said, well, I'm glad I was able to do this. And I think I've helped in many ways. I remember one of the boys, this is back in, I think it was in 1990 or 91. He said, he had this image of a Black preacher, but I did not fit that image. I did not fit that image. So he said, but you are good. So I've had, I've been able, I know I've had a positive impact on young people who are now adults. And I know God has meant for me to be the one here.
Right. You mentioned, I read in an interview that someone else had done with you, and you said you didn't want to be, you didn't take on African American, but you preferred to be Black, American first and then Black. Tell me, why is it that you don't take on African American?
Well, because I look at that as, Africa's a huge continent. And I think what I would look at is that the reason why I've said that is because generations, I go back, have been in America, United States. So I feel, as again, I did not feel when I went to Ethiopia that I was going home. My home was Colorado Springs, Colorado at the time.
Yeah. I must say that when I went to Ghana, and that was my first time ever going to any part of Africa, but when I went to Ghana and I stepped off the plane, it was actually the first time I felt like I was home. There was a connection there that I can't really put into words, but I felt at home. It was like I'm back home. I'm finally made it home. And so I understand it's a lot of folks say, I'm Black, but I don't have no connection to Africa. But I think about Irish who still are, they have that, they don't have a physical connection, but they know that somewhere that's where their ancestors come from. But I do know that now I hear more Black Americans say, I'm just Black, I'm not. And I hear, and I love Minister Durham. He always says, first thing is I'm American, and then I'm this. Because when I've gone other places outside of Africa, the first thing they say is that they're English or they're this or they're Italian. They don't put a coloration in front of it, or so it's interesting, this dynamics that I hear you speak about.
Well, and when I landed in Ethiopia, I did not think, I always said I was from Colorado, I'm American. And we were, this was after I finished the Peace Corps, but I was traveling with two friends from Peace Corps days. And Michael, Irish American, had this dark beard, brown hair, Martha, redhead. And so we're on this little bus and we're in Rwanda, and they're talking about us. And they said that I was an Ethiopian.